I'm Julie. I thought I had built a life with a man who valued family above all else, until I discovered bank statements showing he'd drained our twins' college funds, $137,000 gone to finance his secret life with another woman. But when he smugly served me divorce papers, he had no idea I was about to reveal the inheritance I'd kept protected from the day my grandmother first warned me. Love with your heart, but secure your future with your head. The realization came on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind where normality feels like a thin veneer over something darker. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'd been searching for the warranty for our refrigerator when I found it, a statement from an account I didn't recognize, tucked between home insurance documents. Educational Trust for Emma and Ethan Williams, the heading read, but the balance showed just $742.16. Last time I'd checked 4 months earlier, it had held $137,842.53. My fingers went numb. This was our children's future. Years of careful savings, grandparent gifts, portions of every bonus Tom had received at the investment firm. Our twins were 15, just 3 years from college. We'd promised them they wouldn't start adulthood, burdened with debt. I didn't scream. I didn't call Tom at work demanding answers. Instead, I photographed the statement, replaced it exactly as I'd found it, and continued looking for the warranty as if my world hadn't just tilted on its axis. Something deep inside me, the part that had noticed Tom's late nights, unexplained, weekend client meetings, and the subtle distance growing between us, had been waiting for this moment. "Mom, have you seen my blue sweater?" Emma called from upstairs, pulling me back to the present. "Check the laundry room," I replied, my voice remarkably steady. I folded a load this morning. Our Tudor-style home in Oak Ridge continued its normal rhythm. Emma preparing for debate club. Ethan practicing guitar in his room. Dinner ingredients waiting on the counter. Everything appeared unchanged, yet nothing was the same. That night, I served Tom's favorite lasagna. He complimented the meal, asked the kids about their day, mentioned a potential client his firm was courting. I watched him, this man I'd been married to for 18 years, with new eyes. How easily the conversation flowed. How convincing his interest in our children's activities. Was any of it real? "Julie, you're quiet tonight," he observed, reaching for his wine glass. "Headache again?" I smiled, just thinking about the Webster account. I managed our family's small interior design business, and the Webster project was our largest commercial contract to date. Lots of moving pieces. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my explanation. "You'll nail it. You always do." After the kids retreated to their rooms, Tom settled in the den with his laptop. I cleaned the kitchen slowly, methodically, as my mind raced through possibilities, each more devastating than the last. Theft from our children wasn't just financial betrayal. It was a statement about what he valued, what he was willing to sacrifice. I waited until Tom went upstairs to shower before I slipped into the den and checked his browser history. He'd cleared it, something he never used to do. I opened his laptop bag and found a receipt from Riverview Lodge dated 2 weeks earlier. $430 for a deluxe suite I knew nothing about. My heart pounded as I photographed it, then carefully returned it to the exact same position. That night, I lay beside Tom in bed, listening to his breathing deepen into sleep. The man I'd chosen to build a life with, to create a family with, had stolen from our children. The betrayal felt physical, like something pressing against my chest. I slipped out of bed at 2 a.m. and padded to our home office. Using the emergency key I'd kept hidden for years, I unlocked Tom's filing cabinet and began a systematic review of our finances. What I found made me sink into the office chair, hand pressed to my mouth to stifle any sound. Multiple transactions, carefully spaced over 8 months. Money moved from the college fund to our joint checking account, then immediately transferred out to an account number I didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, $5,000, $7,500, then larger sums as time went on. But Tom had made a critical mistake. On one transfer form, he'd written a memo line he'd failed to erase completely. Dana Condo down. Dana. The name hung in the air like smoke. I photographed everything, then meticulously returned each document to its place. As the eastern sky began to lighten outside our window, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront Tom. Not yet. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a single betrayal. This was calculated, sustained deception. And somewhere out there was a woman named Dana who was benefiting from our children's stolen future. I sent a text to Bree, my oldest friend and a financial investigator. Need to meet. Important. Coffee at 8? Office flooded. Make it 9 at Westlake Cafe, she replied almost immediately, despite the early hour. Bree never slept well, a trait that had served her career investigating financial crimes. By 7 a.m., I'd made breakfast for the kids, packed their lunches, and was dressed in one of my more expensive business outfits, armor for the day ahead. Big meeting today? Tom asked, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. Potential new client, I replied. Not a lie. I was indeed meeting someone new, the version of me who wouldn't accept this betrayal. Tom kissed my cheek before leaving. That's my girl, always hustling. See you tonight. Might be late. Quarterly reports due. I watched him walk to his car, so confident, so certain of his world and his place in it. He had no idea that while he'd been dismantling our children's future piece by piece, I'd been keeping a secret of my own. My grandmother Elizabeth had left me a substantial inheritance when she passed 5 years ago, property in Maine, investments, and a trust that had grown steadily. Never tell a soul what you have, she'd instructed during our last conversation. Not even Tom. A woman must always have her own safety net. I'd followed her advice, partly out of respect, partly because her insistence had triggered a small, quiet alarm in me I couldn't explain. That inheritance, now worth just over $1.2 million, had remained my silent insurance policy, managed through a separate financial advisor Tom had never met. I hadn't touched a penny of it, continuing to work, contributing to our family finances from my design business. As I drove to meet Bree, the morning traffic flowed around me, commuters heading to offices, schools, the rhythms of ordinary life. But I was crossing a threshold, moving from a woman who believed in her marriage to one who understood it had been built on quicksand. By the time I parked at Westlake Cafe, my shock had crystallized into something colder, more focused. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was a mother whose children had been robbed, and I had resources Tom knew nothing about. Bree was already at a corner table, 2 coffees waiting. Her sharp eyes assessed me as I approached. Whatever it is, she said without preamble, we'll fix it. I placed my phone on the table, screen up. Tom emptied the twins' college fund. I need to know where the money went, who Dana is, and what I'm really dealing with before I make my next move. Bree didn't gasp or offer platitudes. Instead, she nodded once. Show me everything. Sitting across from Bree at Westlake Cafe, I asked the questions that had circled my mind all night. How long has he been planning this? Was any of it ever real? Do you know what it's like to make dinner for someone who's stealing your children's future? Bree's expression remained neutral, professional, but I saw the flash of anger in her eyes. We'd been friends since college. She'd been maid of honor at my wedding, godmother to Emma. She knew the Julie who had believed in Tom, who had trusted him with our finances while I built my design business. You need to understand what you're up against, she said quietly, leaning forward. This isn't just about money disappearing. This is about calculated deception. I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup, drawing warmth from it while something cold settled in my chest. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I keep thinking about the day we opened those accounts. Emma and Ethan were 7. Tom made this big speech to them about how education was the greatest gift we could give them. My voice caught. They were too young to understand, but I thought, it was beautiful, that he was beautiful. Don't do that, Bree said gently. Don't question every memory. That's exactly what he wants, for you to doubt yourself. I nodded, though the questions continued to swirl. Had he already been planning this back then? Had he been looking for ways out even as we'd built our life together? Or was this a more recent betrayal, a middle-aged man's desperate grasp at something new, something exciting? I need to keep it together for Emma and Ethan, I said, straightening my shoulders. They can't know yet. Not until I have a plan. The twins come first, Bree agreed. And getting this right means being strategic, not just reactive. The idea of performance, of continuing to play the role of happy wife while investigating my husband's betrayal, felt surreal. Yet I knew it was necessary. If Tom realized I'd discovered his theft, he might accelerate whatever plan he had in motion. I keep asking myself what I missed, I admitted. There must have been signs. Bree's expression softened. Julie. People, like Tom, people who can compartmentalize this effectively, they don't leave obvious signs. That's how they succeed. This isn't about what you failed to see. This is about what he deliberately hid. I thought about the small changes over the past year. Tom's new gym membership he rarely seemed to use, business trips that seemed to multiply, the password on his phone changing from our anniversary date to a fingerprint scan. Each one explainable, reasonable, and each one, in retrospect, a thread in a larger pattern. I feel like I've been living in a house where the foundation was crumbling, but all I noticed were squeaky floorboards, I said. We spent the next hour creating a timeline, mapping out when the transfers began, when Tom's behavior had shifted. Bree took detailed notes, her investigator's mind already working through angles I hadn't considered. The condo memo, that's concrete, she said. Property transactions leave records. If he's buying real estate for this Dana, we'll find it. I flinched at the name. Dana. Someone real, not just an abstract threat. Someone who had participated in stealing from my children. What if it's been going on for years? I asked, voicing my deepest fear. What if our entire marriage has been— Stop, Bree interrupted firmly. You can drive yourself crazy with what-ifs, but they don't help you move forward. Focus on what we know, what we can prove. The practical approach helped anchor me, but it couldn't completely quiet the emotional storm. 18 years of marriage. 2 children. Countless shared moments, holidays, achievements, losses, ordinary Tuesday nights, all now cast in shadow. I thought I'd known this man, but the Tom who could systematically drain our children's future was a stranger. What's the worst part? Bree asked after a moment, her voice gentler. I considered the question. The betrayal? The deception? The theft? The other woman? The premeditation, I finally answered. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was calculated. He looked at our children's college funds and saw something he could take. Bree nodded. That's what will matter legally, too. As she outlined next steps, I felt a shifting inside me. Grief giving way to resolve. I thought of my grandmother Elizabeth, whose inheritance I'd protected all these years. She'd survived the loss of her husband in World War II, raised my father, alone, built a successful real estate business in an era when women weren't welcome in that field. Life will break your heart, Julie, she'd told me once. But it can't break your spine unless you let it. I wouldn't let it. By the time we finished our meeting, I had a plan. I would continue normal life at home while Bree used her professional resources to trace the money and identify Dana more completely. I would document everything, secure copies of all financial records, and consult with a divorce attorney without Tom's knowledge. "Don't tip your hand," Bree warned as we prepared to leave. Men like Tom get dangerous when cornered, I thought, about the man who'd kissed my cheek that morning, the father who'd helped Ethan with physics homework last night. Was he capable of something truly dangerous? The fact that I didn't immediately know the answer told me how much had already been lost. Outside the cafe, the September air carried the first hint of autumn. In normal years, this season meant back-to-school shopping, planning for the twins, birthday in October, preparations for the holidays ahead, the familiar rhythms of family life. "How do I face him tonight?" I asked Bree as we walked to our cars. "How do I sit across from him at dinner knowing what I know?" She squeezed my arm. "You remember that every day you keep him in the dark is a day you're gaining strength and information. This isn't just performance, Julie. It's protection, for you and for the twins." I nodded, straightening my shoulders. As I drove home, I thought about the design project I needed to finish, the parent-teacher meetings next week, Emma's debate tournament on Saturday, life continuing as the ground shifted beneath me. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I had composed my face into a mask of normalcy. I was no longer just Julie Williams, wife and mother. I was a woman with a mission, gathering intelligence, behind enemy lines. And the enemy, inconceivably, was the man who'd vowed to love and protect our family. I walked into my beautiful home, the one Tom and I had renovated together room by room over the years, and set my keys in the ceramic dish Emma had made in 7th grade art class. Everything looked the same. Nothing was. 6 months earlier, life had seemed perfectly ordinary. Our family moved through comfortable routines built over years. Tom left early for the investment firm. The twins rushed through breakfast before school, and I balanced client projects with family needs. Our Tudor home in the Oak Ridge neighborhood represented everything we'd worked for: stability, success, the American dream captured in hardwood floors and crown molding. Looking back, I can pinpoint the first moment something felt off. It was February, a Tuesday evening. Tom and I were reviewing household expenses at the kitchen island while a winter storm rattled the windows. "We should revisit the kids' college funds," Tom said casually, highlighting a line on his yellow legal pad. "Interest rates are shifting. Might be time to move some things around." I nodded, trusting his financial expertise as I always had. "Whatever you think is best, as long as it's still growing for them." He smiled, but something flickered in his eyes. So briefly, I almost missed it. "Always thinking of the kids first. That's my Julie." The comment felt odd, slightly patronizing, but I dismissed it. Tom had been working longer hours, stress making him more abrupt than usual. I poured us both more wine and changed the subject to Emma's college visit schedule for spring. 2 weeks later, I noticed Tom taking personal calls in the garage, his voice too low to hear through the door. When I mentioned it, he explained it away easily. "Thinking of surprising you for our anniversary," he said, kissing my forehead. "Can't have you overhearing the plans." It was plausible. Our 19th anniversary was approaching in April. But something in his delivery felt rehearsed, as if he'd prepared the excuse in advance. Still, I pushed the doubt away. After 18 years together, didn't I owe him the benefit of trust? March brought unseasonably warm weather and the first concrete sign that something was wrong. I was in Tom's home office looking for stamps when I noticed a credit card statement he'd left open on his desk. A charge for $412 at Sapphire Boutique caught my eye, a store I'd never heard of. Out of curiosity, I searched for it online. An upscale women's clothing store downtown, specializing in lingerie and evening wear. Not my anniversary gift then. I hadn't received anything from Sapphire Boutique. That night, I casually mentioned driving downtown past some new boutiques. There was one called Sapphire something. Looked interesting. Tom didn't look up from his phone. Never heard of it. The lie was so smooth, so effortless, that I almost doubted what I'd seen. Almost. The next day, I found myself parked outside, his office building during what should have been his lunch hour. I hadn't planned it. I'd been dropping off fabric samples to a client nearby and found myself taking the detour without conscious decision. I watched the entrance for 20 minutes before seeing Tom emerge, not with colleagues but alone. He walked briskly down the block, checked his watch, then slipped into a sleek wine bar I knew was popular for business meetings. I waited, telling myself this was ridiculous, crossing a line I'd never approached in our marriage. Just as I was about to leave, Tom exited the restaurant with a woman, tall, blonde, perhaps early 30s. She laughed at something he said, touching his arm with familiar ease. They walked to the corner, and before parting, he leaned in to kiss her cheek, his hand lingering at her waist a moment too long for casual acquaintance. I drove home, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. It could be innocent, a client, a colleague, a business relationship. The kiss could have been European-style professionalism. The lingerie could have been for a colleague's wedding shower gift, but doubt, once planted, grows rapidly. That evening, Tom mentioned a business dinner the following Thursday. Potential new clients from Seattle. Probably run late. I smiled and noted it on our shared calendar, playing my part perfectly. But this time, I added something else to my private calendar. 7 p.m. Research. While Tom was at his business dinner, I systematically went through his office. I wasn't proud of it, but the growing knot of suspicion demanded action. Most of what I found was mundane. Work documents, bills, warranties for electronics. His desk drawer contained the usual clutter: pens, paper clips, business cards. But, in the back of his filing cabinet, I found a folder labeled Personal Investments that contained nothing about investments. Instead, it held a rental agreement for a safety deposit box I knew nothing about, and a small key taped to the inside. Cover! I photographed both, then carefully returned everything exactly as I'd found it. Whatever Tom was hiding, I wasn't ready to confront it, not without more information. April arrived, bringing our anniversary. Tom took me to Maison Marcel, an expensive French restaurant downtown. He seemed completely present, reminiscing about our wedding day, discussing plans for the twins' college visits that summer. He gave me diamond earrings that matched my wedding set. 19 years, he said, raising his champagne glass. And you're still the best decision I ever made. I smiled, clinked my glass against his, and wondered how he could compartmentalize so completely. Was the man across from me, attentive, loving, seemingly devoted, the real Tom? Or was it the man who took mysterious calls in the garage and bought lingerie for someone else? After our anniversary, Tom suggested we revisit our wills and estate planning. With the twins heading to college soon, we should make sure everything's in order, he explained one Sunday morning over coffee. The timing struck me as odd, but his reasoning was sound. He scheduled an appointment with a new attorney, not the one we'd used for years. Millstream and Associates are more specialized in estate planning, he explained when I questioned the change. Better for our current needs. I agreed to meet him at the attorney's office that Friday, but on Wednesday night, I discovered another clue, a confirmation email for the appointment that had auto-forwarded to our shared family account. It referenced updated beneficiary discussions and asset transfer considerations. Something cold settled in my stomach. Tom wasn't just updating our wills, he was potentially changing something significant about our financial arrangement. Combined with the mysterious safety deposit box and the college fund adjustments he'd mentioned months earlier, a pattern was emerging. Thursday morning, I called Bree for the first time about my concerns. I may be overthinking this, I began, but something doesn't feel right. Bree listened as I outlined what I'd observed, never interrupting. When I finished, the line was silent for a moment. "Julie," she finally said, "I think it's time to get a clear picture of your finances. All of them. Before that meeting tomorrow." That afternoon, I visited our longtime bank while Tom was at work. The manager, Miranda, had handled our accounts for years. I requested copies of all statements for the past 12 months, checking, savings, and the children's educational trusts. "Of course, Mrs. Williams," she said cheerfully. "Mr. Williams usually handles these requests, but everything's jointly accessible." As she printed the statements, Miranda chatted about her daughter's upcoming wedding. I nodded and smiled automatically, my mind racing ahead to what I might find in those pages. "Here you are," she said, handing me a sealed envelope. "All statements, for the main accounts. For the investment portfolios and the children's trusts, you'll need to contact Westerly Financial directly. That's where they were transferred last fall." I froze. "Transferred? From here?" Miranda nodded. "Yes, in October. Mr. Williams moved them to Westerly for better growth options. I have the transfer documentation if you need it." "Please," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the roaring in my ears. October, 8 months ago. Without discussion, without my knowledge, Tom had moved our children's college funds to a different institution. As I drove home with the bank documents beside me, I called the estate attorney's office and canceled our appointment, claiming a family emergency. Then I called Westerly Financial. "I'm afraid we have no accounts under the name Julie Williams," the representative informed me after checking their records. "What about under Thomas Williams?" I asked. "Yes, we do show portfolio accounts for Thomas Williams, but they're not joint accounts. I can't provide information to non-account holders, not joint accounts." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Tom hadn't just transferred the money, he'd removed my name from the accounts entirely. That night, I watched Tom across the dinner table as he chatted with the twins about their day, and I saw him clearly for the first time in months. Not as my husband of 19 years, but as a man systematically disconnecting our financial lives. A man preparing for something I hadn't yet recognized. The question was no longer whether something was wrong, but how wrong, and what exactly he was planning. The morning after discovering the transferred accounts, I called in a favor from Miranda at the bank. We'd served on the same charity committee for years, and her daughter had been my interior design client for her first apartment. "I need to know exactly what's happening with our finances," I told her over coffee before the bank opened. "And I need this conversation to stay between us." Miranda's professional smile faded into concern. "Julie, what's going on?" "I'm not entirely sure yet," I admitted. "But I need to protect myself and my children." For the next hour, Miranda walked me through every transaction across our joint accounts for the past year. Most seemed normal. Mortgage, payments, utilities, credit card bills. But starting 8 months ago, a pattern emerged. Large transfers from our joint savings to Tom's personal checking account, followed by withdrawals or transfers to external accounts. "These transfers here," Miranda said, pointing to 3 transactions. "They're unusual. Large amounts moving to an account at Riverview Credit Union. It's not a bank we typically work with for investment purposes." "Can you tell whose account it is?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not without a subpoena or account holder authorization." I photographed every statement, every transfer record. By the time I left the bank, I had confirmation that over $70,000 had moved from our joint savings to unknown destinations in the past 8 months, separate from whatever had happened to the college funds. That afternoon, I made 2 decisions. I opened a new personal bank account at a different bank, one Tom had no relationship with, and I called Lucas Barrett, a divorce attorney Bree had recommended. "I'm not sure I need a divorce lawyer," I told him when we met the next day in his downtown office. "I just need to understand my options." Lucas, with his calm demeanor and methodical approach, reminded me of my father, Practical, unflappable. Most people who sit in that chair say the same thing, he observed. Understanding options is always the right first step. I outlined what I'd discovered so far: the transferred college funds, the removed access, the mysterious withdrawals, the safety deposit box, the lingerie purchases. None of this is definitive proof of anything specific, I acknowledged. It could be poor communication, or poor judgment, or— Mrs. Williams, Lucas interrupted gently. In my 23 years of practice, I've never seen these patterns. In a marriage that wasn't heading toward dissolution, either planned or already in progress. The words landed like stones. Despite my suspicions, hearing an objective professional confirm them brought a different kind of pain. Based on what you've described, he continued, your husband appears to be systematically separating assets and establishing independent financial structures. This is often preparation for a divorce filing, typically by the spouse moving the assets. But the college funds, I pressed, those were specifically for our children. How could he— Unfortunately, despite their designated purpose, educational funds are often treated as marital assets unless very specifically structured otherwise. If he had account access, he likely had legal authority to move them. I thought about those accounts. Opened when the twins were 7, funded consistently for years. Emma and Ethan's future security. What do I do now? I asked. Lucas outlined 3 immediate steps. Document everything without alerting Tom, secure copies of all financial records, and protect whatever assets remained under my control. What about my inheritance? I asked, thinking of my grandmother's trust. Tom doesn't know the details. It's managed separately. For the first time, Lucas looked genuinely pleased. That's potentially very significant. Inherited assets kept separate from marital finances can often remain protected in divorce proceedings. Do you have documentation showing you've maintained it separately? I nodded. Complete records. I've never commingled those funds with our joint accounts. Good. Keep it that way, he advised. And gather those records as well. As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from Bree. Found something. Meet me at 4. Wow. We met at a small coffee shop in a neighborhood Tom never visited. Bree arrived with a slim folder and a grim expression. The Dana connection checks out, she said without preamble. Dana Walker, 34, real estate agent with Meridian Properties, specializes in luxury condos downtown. She slid a photograph across the table, the same blonde woman I'd seen Tom with outside the wine bar. She sold 3 units in the Riverview Towers development last quarter, Bree continued, including Unit 1214, which closed in April. Purchase price, $695,000. Buyer, Westerly Holdings, LLC. My mouth went dry. And Westerly is a shell company formed 6 months ago. The registered agent is a corporate services firm that specializes in privacy. But the LLC's banking is done through Westerly Financial, where our children's college funds had been transferred. There's more, Bree said, her voice softening slightly. Dana Walker's social media is mostly professional, but she has a private Instagram account under Dana Walks. It's locked, but her profile picture shows her with a man. She hesitated. The man's face isn't visible, but the watch is distinctive. She showed me her phone screen. The image showed Dana laughing, champagne glass raised, leaning against a man whose face was turned away. But on his wrist was the Omega, Seamaster I'd given Tom for his 40th birthday, custom engraved on the back. Something shifted inside me, a final barrier between suspicion and certainty giving way. Tom wasn't just preparing for divorce. He was building a new life with another woman, using our family's resources to do it. The timing lines up, Bree explained. The college fund transfers started right around when Westerly Holdings was formed. The condo purchase closed 3 months ago, right around when you noticed Tom taking calls in the garage. I stared at the photo, at the distinctive watch catching the light. He's buying her a condo with our children's education money. Julie, Bree said carefully, based on the transfer patterns, I think the condo might be just part of it. The regular transfers suggest ongoing support, possibly setting her up financially. The implications crashed over me. Not just an affair, but a complete parallel life being constructed. A life Tom was funding by systematically dismantling our family's financial foundation. What's the next step? I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. You need to secure what's left, Bree advised. And you need to understand exactly what you're facing before confronting him. That evening, I called my financial advisor, Corey Peterson, who managed my inheritance. My grandmother's trust had been in his firm's care for decades. Julie, good to hear from you, he greeted me warmly. Everything okay? You don't usually call after hours. I need to verify the current status of my trust, I said, and I need to make sure no changes can be made without my explicit in-person authorization. There was a pause. Has someone attempted to make changes? My heart stuttered. Have there been requests? Your husband called last week, Corey said carefully. He asked about consolidating your inheritance with some other investments he's managing. I explained that wasn't possible given the trust structure your grandmother established. Cold anger replaced the shock. Tom had not only stolen from our children, he'd attempted to access my protected inheritance, the one thing my grandmother had insisted I keep separate. Corey, I need you to lock down everything, I said. No information to anyone but me, no changes, no distributions without my in-person notarized authorization, and I need full documentation of the trust's current holdings. Julie, this sounds serious. Is everything all right? No, I answered truthfully. But it will be. That night, I lay awake beside Tom, studying his profile in the darkness. The steady breathing, the familiar shape of him, all suddenly rendered strange. I thought about the family photos lining our hallway, the vacation memories, the life we'd documented so carefully. How much of it had been real? When had he started planning his exit? More importantly, when had he decided our children's future was an acceptable price to pay for his new beginning? As dawn broke, I made my decision. I would not confront Tom yet, not until I had secured everything possible and understood the full scope of what we were facing. But I would no longer doubt what was happening. My husband was stealing our family's future piece by piece, and somehow he'd convinced himself he was entitled to do it. The key to Tom's safety deposit box burned in my pocket. I'd made a copy, at a hardware store far from our neighborhood, returning the original to its hiding place in his filing cabinet. Now I stood in the lobby of First Meridian Bank, heart pounding. I need to access box 4721, I told the attendant, sliding over the key in my ID. I'll need Mr. Williams present, Mrs. Williams. The box registration doesn't list you as an authorized user. Another exclusion. Another secret. Outside, I called Bree. No luck at the bank, I reported. The safety deposit box is in his name only. I've got something, she said. Westerly Holdings LLC made another significant purchase last week. A boat. A boat? I repeated, bewildered. 42-foot cabin cruiser. Docked at Harborview Marina. Purchase price, $215,000. The amount staggered me. Combined with the condo, Tom had spent nearly $1 million, money that included our children's college funds, on luxury assets. There's a registration celebration scheduled for Friday, Bree continued. The boat's name is New Beginnings. Thought. Symbolism wasn't subtle. Tom wasn't just having an affair. He was christening his fresh start with expensive gifts, funded by our family's future. That evening, I made dinner while Tom worked late. The twins were at a school function, giving me rare quiet time to search Tom's office, looking specifically for anything related to Westerly Holdings. In his desk drawer, beneath a stack of old warranties, I found a sealed envelope addressed to T. Williams, Managing Member, Westerly Holdings, LLC. Inside was a property tax notice for the condo at Riverview Towers. My hands trembled as I photographed the document. The tax assessment valued the property at $10,000, even more than the purchase price Bree had discovered. As I carefully returned the envelope, my phone buzzed with a text from Miranda at the bank. "Need to speak with you. Urgent." We met before the bank opened the next morning, her normally cheerful demeanor replaced with professional concern. "Julie, I've been reviewing the transaction history you asked about," she began. "Yesterday, there was a significant development. Mr. Williams initiated wire transfers to close out all remaining joint investment accounts." My stomach dropped. "All of them?" "Everything," she confirmed. "Over $340,000 in remaining liquid assets, all transferred to external accounts." "Can we stop it?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not without a joint request or court order." "When were these requests made?" "Yesterday afternoon, approximately 4:30 p.m., right after I'd visited First Meridian Bank asking about his safety deposit box. Someone had alerted him. He knew I was investigating." "There's one more thing," Miranda added hesitantly. "Mr. Williams called personally this morning to confirm the transfers. He mentioned he'd be out of the country starting Friday for about 2 weeks." Friday. The boat celebration. The timing crystallized. Tom wasn't just transferring money, he was preparing to leave. By noon, I was sitting in Lucas Barrett's office again. "He's making his move," Lucas observed. "The timing suggests he knows you're investigating and he's speeding up his timeline." "What can we do?" I asked. "File immediately," Lucas advised. "Emergency motion to freeze marital assets, including the condo and the boat. We can be in court tomorrow morning if you're ready to proceed." Was I ready to formally end my 18-year marriage? To tell Emma and Ethan that their father had stolen their college funds? But the alternative was worse, letting Tom complete his plan, leaving us with nothing. "Do it," I said. I paused at our front door, hand on the knob, steeling myself for what awaited inside. The weight of everything I'd discovered pressed down on me, not just the financial betrayal, but the calculated nature of it all. When I entered, the house was quiet. Tom stood in our kitchen, leaning against the counter, phone in hand. "You're home early," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Meeting finished sooner than expected." He studied me carefully. "You've been busy today." The statement hung in the air. Not a question, an accusation. Someone had warned him. Have I? I moved to the refrigerator, outwardly calm despite my racing heart. "Cut the act, Julie." His voice hardened. "I know you've been looking into our accounts, asking questions at the bank." I turned to face him. "And I know you've emptied our children's college funds to buy property and a boat for your girlfriend." The statement landed like a physical blow. For a moment, Tom's composed facade cracked, surprise, then calculation flashing across his face. "That's not what happened," he began. "Don't." I held up my hand. "I have the transaction records, Tom. I know about Westerly Holdings. I know about Dana Walker and her specialty in hiding assets during divorces. I know about the safety deposit box, the condo at Riverview Towers, and the boat named New Beginnings. I know everything." He stared, reassessing. "It's not what you think. The money is still for the kids. I'm just protecting it in case... In case what?" My voice remained steady. "In case I somehow spent our children's future? I wasn't the one transferring it to a shell company to buy luxury real estate and boats." He paced the kitchen, agitation breaking through his control. "You don't understand the financial pressures I've been under. The market conditions, the firm's expectations. Stop it." The sharpness in my tone made him look up. "This isn't about market conditions. It's about you stealing from our children to finance your exit strategy." Silence filled the kitchen. Then Tom's demeanor changed. Pretense replaced by cold efficiency. You've always been naive about finances, Julie. That's why I've handled them. His tone was dismissive, almost pitying. What's happening now is just restructuring. Everything will be addressed in the divorce. The divorce? So casual, so matter-of-fact. As if discussing a business transaction rather than dissolving our family. When were you planning to tell me? I asked. Before or after your trip with Dana on your new boat? His eyes narrowed. You've been having me followed. I didn't need to. Your financial footprints were clear enough. I leaned against the counter, exhausted by the performance we were maintaining. How long, Tom? How long have you been planning this? He hesitated, then shrugged slightly. Does it matter? In that moment, I saw him clearly. Not as the man I'd loved for 19 years, but as he truly was. Calculating, entitled, completely disconnected from the impact of his actions on his children. It matters to Emma and Ethan, I replied quietly. It will matter when they realize their father prioritized a luxury lifestyle with his girlfriend over their education. Something flickered in his eyes, the first sign of genuine emotion. The kids will be fine. I'll take care of them. Like you've taken care of their college funds? His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. This conversation isn't productive. We can discuss division of assets through our attorneys. My attorney has already filed an emergency motion to freeze all assets connected to Westerly Holdings, I informed him. The hearing is tomorrow morning. His face hardened. You've been busy. So have you. Transferring the remaining $340,000 from our joint accounts today was especially productive. For a moment, raw anger flashed across his features. Then his phone buzzed again, insistently. I need to take this, he said, already moving toward the door. Of course you do. I didn't try to stop him. Dana must be wondering about her boat celebration on Friday. After he left, I stood alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the trappings of the life we'd built. How quickly it had all unraveled. I moved through the house as if in a dream, touching familiar objects that suddenly felt foreign. In our bedroom, Tom's closet door stood ajar. Inside, I noticed gaps on the rack where clothing had been removed. He'd already started packing, preparing for his departure. The fear and shock that had initially dominated my response to Tom's betrayal were replaced by something stronger. A clear-eyed determination to protect what mattered most, my children's future. Morning arrived with deceptive normalcy, sunlight streaming through kitchen windows, coffee brewing, the twins gathering their school things. Tom hadn't returned, but his absences weren't unusual enough to raise immediate questions. Dad already leave for work? Ethan asked, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. He's handling some client issues, I replied, not quite a lie. He'll be tied up for a few days. Emma, always more perceptive, studied my face. Everything okay, Mom? You seem tired. I smiled, touching her cheek briefly. Just a big design project deadline, nothing to worry about. At 8:15 a.m., I arrived at the courthouse to meet Lucas. He was waiting outside the assigned courtroom, briefcase in hand. Tom's attorney filed an emergency response at 7 a.m., he informed me. Gerald Hoffman, aggressive, expensive, specializes in high-asset divorces. Tom works fast, I observed. It means he's been preparing for this longer than we thought. Hoffman doesn't take cases without substantial retainers. Inside the courtroom, I sat beside Lucas at the plaintiff's table. At precisely 9 a.m., the door opened, and Tom entered with a silver-haired man in an impeccable suit. Our eyes met briefly. His expression was neutral, controlled, revealing nothing of the man who had shared my bed for almost 2 decades. Judge Winters entered, a tall woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for efficiency. After reviewing the filings, she addressed the court. Lucas presented our case methodically. The discovered transfers, the shell company, the luxury purchases, the systematic emptying of joint accounts, He submitted the financial records Bree had uncovered, highlighting Dana Walker's pattern of involvement in similar cases. Gerald Hoffman rose next, his voice smoothly confident. Your Honor, Mr. Williams categorically denies any improper financial management. The transfers in question represent strategic investment decisions made in his professional capacity as the family's financial manager. Mrs. Williams has limited understanding of complex investment structures. I felt a flash of anger, but kept my expression neutral. Judge Winters interrupted. Mr. Hoffman, the documentation shows Mr. Williams as the sole managing member of Westerly Holdings, LLC. A professional capacity, Your Honor, distinct from personal ownership. The judge reviewed the documents again, her expression skeptical. And the boat named New Beginnings? The condominium? Are these also professional investments for multiple clients? Hoffman hesitated slightly. They represent diversified asset allocation within the investment portfolio. Purchased with funds directly transferred from accounts specifically designated as children's educational trusts, Judge Winters noted, looking over her glasses. After 30 more minutes of arguments, Judge Winters made her ruling. A temporary freeze on all assets connected to Westerly Holdings, LLC, including the condo and boat, a prohibition on any further transfers from joint accounts, and expedited financial discovery. Outside the courtroom, Tom caught up to me as Lucas stepped away to make a call. This is unnecessary drama, he said, voice low. We could have worked this out privately, I turned to face him. Like you worked out emptying our children's college funds privately? His jaw tightened. I was reorganizing assets for better returns. If you'd waited... For what? For you to finish transferring everything before serving me with divorce papers? For you to sail away on New Beginnings with Dana while our children were left with nothing? His expression hardened. You're making this messy. The kids will suffer because you couldn't handle this discreetly. The audacity stunned me. I'm making it messy? You stole from our children, Tom. Keep your voice down, he hissed, glancing around the courthouse hallway. Why? Afraid someone might hear the truth? That the respected investment manager Thomas Williams robbed his own children? He stepped closer, voice dangerously low. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Julie. No idea what I can do. Before I could respond, Lucas returned, positioning himself slightly between us. Mrs. Williams, we should go. Tom backed away, his mask of control slipping back into place. This isn't finished. You're right about that, I agreed, turning to Levi. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. We need to tell the kids together. Dinner tomorrow, 6 p.m. I'll be there. No mention of the court hearing, the asset freeze, or his earlier intimidation attempt, just this clinical approach to informing our children that their family was dissolving. I typed back, yes, they deserve that much. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I had composed my face into a mask of normalcy. I was no longer just Julie Williams, wife and mother. I was a woman with a mission, gathering intelligence behind enemy lines. And the enemy, inconceivably, was the man who'd vowed to love and protect our family. The morning after the court hearing, I woke before dawn, my mind already racing with plans. The temporary asset freeze bought us time, but Tom and his attorney would be working frantically to restructure whatever they could. I needed to be equally strategic. I made coffee and settled at the kitchen table with a legal pad, organizing my thoughts into clear categories: financial security, children's well-being, home stability, and legal strategy. By 7 a.m., I had a comprehensive battle plan. I started with emails. One to Corey confirming our meeting to restructure portions of my inheritance into new educational trusts. Another to my design business's accountant requesting complete separation of business and personal finances. Next, I called Lucas. I want full transparency with the children about what's happened. but I need to understand the legal implications of sharing specific details. Generally speaking, he advised, children should be shielded from the financial complexities of divorce. However, given that Tom directly impacted their college funds, some explanation is appropriate. After the twins left for school, I drove to my design studio, needing to secure my business before Tom could try to claim it as a marital asset. For 3 hours, I methodically documented every aspect of the business I'd built while raising the twins, projects completed, client relationships nurtured, revenue generated. "Is everything okay?" Erica, my assistant, asked as I organized files. "Tom and I are separating," I said simply. "I need to ensure the business is properly documented as my separate professional endeavor." At my meeting with Corey that afternoon, I outlined my plan for the inheritance funds. "I want to establish 2 separate educational trusts for Emma and Ethan," I explained, "structured to be completely protected from any divorce proceedings." Corey nodded. "Your grandmother's trust has specific provisions that make this relatively straightforward. We can allocate $300,000 to each child's education fund, and the remainder continues as your protected separate property," he confirmed. "Approximately $670,000 in diversified investments, plus the main properties." The realization struck me. I was not financially vulnerable. Despite Tom's systematic draining of joint resources, I had independent means to secure my future and the children's education. "How quickly can we implement these changes?" I asked. "We can complete the paperwork today. The trusts will be legally established by Friday." As I left Corey's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Looking forward to dinner tonight. We should present a united front for the kids." The audacity was breathtaking, acting as if we were collaborative co-parents, rather than adversaries in a legal battle that he had precipitated by stealing from our children. I called Lucas again. "What's our strategy for the boat and condo? If we sell them, the funds could be recovered for the children's education." "Our first priority is preventing any further transfers," he explained. "Tom may try to refinance or transfer ownership despite the temporary freeze. We've filed motions to have a receiver appointed to manage these assets." By mid-afternoon, I faced my most challenging strategic task, preparing for the conversation with Emma and Ethan. I created a simple document outlining what wouldn't change in their lives. The house would remain their home, their schools wouldn't change, their activities would continue. Most importantly, their college plans remained secure. At 4:30 p.m., I received a call from Bree. "Dana Walker canceled her listings today," she reported. All 5 properties she was representing suddenly disappeared from the real estate database. "She's clearing her professional footprint." "Running damage control," I surmised. The freeze on the Westerly Holdings assets must have spooked her. "Or preparing to disappear," Bree suggested. "People in her line of work typically have contingency plans." The implication was clear. If Dana was preparing to vanish, Tom might be as well. The business trip he'd mentioned could easily become a permanent departure. "Should we be worried about Tom fleeing with whatever assets we haven't frozen?" asked. "It's a legitimate concern," Bree acknowledged. "His firm has international clients. He could theoretically transfer himself to overseas operations." This added new urgency to my planning. If Tom was preparing to disappear beyond the reach of local courts, the confrontation I'd been anticipating might be our only opportunity to get answers. At 5:30 p.m., I began preparing dinner, my battle plan complete. Financial protection measures initiated, legal strategies in motion, business assets documented, and a framework for supporting the twins established. Whatever happened next, I was prepared. Chai. 5:45 p.m., I stepped onto our back porch and called the one person whose perspective I needed most, my mother, Miranda. We'd spoken briefly since my discovery of Tom's betrayal, but I hadn't shared all the details, not wanting to overwhelm her. Now, with the twins' futures secured through my inheritance, and the difficult family dinner minutes away. I needed her steadying influence. "Mom," I said when she answered, "I need your advice." "I've been waiting for this call," she replied. At 68, my mother remained sharp and perceptive. "How bad is it?" I gave her the condensed version, the emptied college funds, the condo, the boat, Dana Walker's specialized services in helping married men hide assets. Her silence lasted several beats. "That son of a bitch," she finally said, the rare profanity revealing her anger. "After everything you've built together." "The court froze the assets temporarily," I explained. "But there's a bigger issue now. We're telling the twins tonight, and I'm struggling with how much they should know." "About the affair or the theft?" she asked directly. "Both. They're 15, Mom. Old enough to understand divorce happens, but this level of betrayal?" I trailed off, looking through the window at our dining room table, set for the most difficult meal of our family's life. "Julie," my mother said, her voice gentle but firm, "children need age-appropriate truth, not comforting lies. Not the graphic details, perhaps, but the essential reality. Which is that their father made choices that prioritized his wants over their needs. That despite those choices, their future remains secure because you've ensured it. That adult relationships sometimes end, but parental love doesn't." Her clarity steadied me. "They'll be devastated about the college funds." "Then make sure they know those funds have been replaced," she countered. "Tell them about Elizabeth's inheritance and how you've secured their education. Let them see that while one parent may have faltered, the other stands firm." My grandmother Elizabeth had never particularly liked Tom. She'd been polite but reserved, watching him with the careful assessment of a woman who'd survived difficult times. Now I wondered if she'd seen something in him that I'd missed. Some fundamental character flaw that had prompted her insistence that I maintain financial independence. "What if they blame me?" I asked, voicing my deepest fear. "What if they think I drove him to this somehow?" "Children are smarter than we give them credit for," my mother replied. "They've lived in this house. They know who you are, who Tom is. Give them space to process, but don't carry blame that isn't yours." After we hung up, I remained on the porch, gathering my strength. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the garden. From inside, I heard the front door open, Emma and Ethan returning from their after-school activities. One more call to make. I dialed Avon Palmer, the children's therapist they'd seen occasionally during earlier academic struggles. "I don't have an appointment," I began when he answered, "but we're in a family crisis situation. Tom and I are divorcing under difficult circumstances and we're telling the twins tonight." "I remember Emma and Ethan well," he replied, his voice calm. "What support do you need?" "Guidance on the immediate aftermath. They're going to have questions I can't anticipate, reactions I might not handle well. First," he advised, "maintain as much normal routine as possible. Teenagers need stability when foundations shake. Second, emphasize what remains constant: your love, their home, their essential safety. Third, validate their emotions without judgment. Anger, grief, confusion, all are normal responses." "Should I schedule sessions for them?" I asked. "Yes, but present it as an available resource, not a requirement. Let them have some agency in when and how they access support." As I ended the call, I heard Tom's car pull into the driveway. The moment of confrontation had arrived. I took a deep breath and went inside. The twins were in the kitchen, Emma arranging vegetables on a platter, Ethan setting out drinks. Their easy coordination, developed over years of shared existence, struck me as particularly poignant. Whatever happened, they had each other. "Dad just pulled up," Emma announced, glancing at me with barely concealed anxiety. Clearly, they sensed the evening's significance. Tom entered, dressed immaculately as always, bringing an artificial cheerfulness that felt jarring in the tension-filled house. There are my favorite people, he exclaimed, hugging the twins with exaggerated enthusiasm. I watched the performance with new eyes. Had he always been this artificial, this disconnected from authentic emotion? Or was this special effort reserved for nights when he had to explain why he'd stolen their college funds? We moved to the dining room, the twins unusually quiet as we settled around the table. For a moment, no one spoke, the weight of unspoken truths hanging in the air. So, Tom finally began, setting down his fork. Your mother and I have something important to discuss with you both. Emma and Ethan exchanged glances. You're getting divorced, Emma stated flatly. We figured that out already. Tom looked startled. His prepared speech derailed. Well, yes. We've decided that… You decided. I interrupted quietly but firmly. Let's be clear about that, Tom. He shot me an angry look before continuing. The important thing is that we both love you very much. This doesn't change that. Where will you live, Dad? Ethan asked directly. Tom hesitated. I've found a place downtown, temporarily. With Dana? Emma asked, her perceptiveness cutting through pretense. The silence that followed was answer enough. Tom recovered quickly, though. My living arrangements aren't the primary concern right now. What matters is that your lives continue with minimal disruption. What about college? Ethan asked. You always said our funds were locked in until… We graduated high school. This was the question I'd been dreading, the direct path to the ugliest truth. Tom shifted uncomfortably. There have been some financial adjustments, he began carefully. Market conditions required reallocation of certain assets. Tom, I said, my voice steady. They deserve honesty, not investment jargon. He glared at me. This isn't the time for… It's exactly the time, I countered. Before you create a narrative that obscures what actually happened. The twins watched this exchange with growing alarm. What's going on? Emma demanded. I looked directly at them, channeling my mother's advice about age-appropriate truth. Your father transferred your college funds to accounts you couldn't access, then used that money to purchase a condominium and boat. Tom slammed, his hand on the table. That is a gross mischaracterization. The court didn't think so, I replied calmly. That's why those assets are now frozen pending investigation. Emma's face had gone pale. Our college money is gone? No, I said firmly, reaching for her hand. Your education is completely secure. I've established new trusts for both of you from my inheritance from Grandma Elizabeth. Your college plans are protected, regardless of what happens with the assets your father transferred. Ethan turned to Tom, eyes wide with disbelief. You took our college money? For real? Tom's composure cracked slightly. It was temporary, a strategic reallocation that would have resulted in greater returns. Your mother is making it sound malicious when it was simply financial management. For a condo downtown? Emma pressed. For Dana? This is exactly why I didn't want to have this conversation like this, Tom snapped, glaring at me. You're deliberately trying to turn them against me. By telling them the truth? I asked. They're old enough to understand what happened. The court certainly did. The twins sat in stunned silence, processing the implications. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice smaller than usual. Will we still see you, Dad? The question pierced the tension, reminding us all that beneath the adult betrayals and legal maneuvers were two teenagers trying to make sense of their fracturing family. Tom's expression softened slightly. Of course. I'm still your father. Nothing changes that. But everything had changed, and we all knew it. The foundation of trust that family requires had been severely damaged. In the silence that followed, I saw Tom not as the man I'd married or the father he'd claimed to be, but as he truly was, someone capable of sacrificing his children's future for his personal desires. As difficult as this moment was, I knew seeking wisdom from my mother and Avon had prepared me for what came next, guiding Emma and Ethan through the painful aftermath of their father's betrayal. Not alone, but with a network of support that Tom hadn't counted on when he'd made his calculations. The dinner ended abruptly after our confrontation. Emma left the table first, her chair scraping loudly as she stood and walked away without a word. Ethan followed moments later, his usual easy demeanor replaced by rigid anger. Tom and I sat in silence, the remnants of our family meal between us. Was that necessary? Tom finally asked, his voice low. Destroying their image of me? You did that yourself, I replied calmly. I just didn't help you hide it. He stood, straightening his jacket with deliberate precision. This isn't finished. My attorney will be in touch about supervised communication. With the children, your manipulation won't stand in court. After he left, I cleared the table mechanically, my mind already shifting from the painful present to the necessary next steps. The twins needed space tonight, but tomorrow would require careful rebuilding. I needed to establish clear foundations for our new reality. First, I texted Avon to schedule appointments for both Emma and Ethan, offering several options over the next few days. Then, I prepared information packets for each of them. Simple folders containing documentation of their new educational trusts, the timeline for our legal proceedings, and resources for teens dealing with parental divorce. Around midnight, I heard movement in the kitchen. I found Ethan making a sandwich, his face still tight with suppressed emotion. Can't sleep? I asked gently, keeping my distance. He shrugged. Not hungry earlier. I sat at the counter, giving him space to talk if he wanted to. After a few minutes of silence, he finally spoke. Why would he do that? Take our college money? The direct question deserved a direct answer. I believe he convinced himself it was temporary, that he could replace it eventually. For a boat? Ethan's voice cracked slightly. For some woman. We've never even met. I chose my words carefully. Your father made choices I don't understand and can't justify. But I want you to know something important. His choices reflect on him, not on you. Ethan studied his sandwich without eating it. Is he going to jail or something? For taking the money? No, I assured him. This is being handled through civil court, not criminal court. The focus is on recovering assets, not punishment. He nodded, processing this. Mom, you really fixed the college thing? With Grandma Elizabeth's money? Completely fixed, I confirmed. You and Emma don't need to worry about that. Your education plans haven't changed. Some of the tension left his shoulders. Does Dad know? About the inheritance? He knew I received something when Grandma died, but not the details. I established your new educational trusts yesterday. Ethan finally took a bite of his sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. He's going to be really mad when he finds out. The simple observation carried unexpected insight. Ethan had recognized something fundamental about his father's character. That being outmaneuvered would anger Tom more than being caught stealing from his children had shamed him. Probably, I agreed. But that's for me to handle, not you. Ethan finished his sandwich in silence, then put his plate in the dishwasher, a small, ordinary act of routine that felt strangely comforting amid the chaos. I scheduled appointments with Dr. Palmer, I told him. If you want to talk to someone who's not me or Emma. He nodded. Yeah, okay. Good night, Mom. After he left, I sent emails to Emma and Ethan's school counselors, briefly explaining our family situation and requesting additional support. Then I contacted my 3 closest friends, women who had stood by me through previous life challenges and whom I knew would rally around us now. By morning, I had responses from all of them, offering practical help, rides for the twins if needed, dinner drop-offs, weekend activities to provide distraction. The groundwork for our support network was falling into place. Over breakfast, I gave Emma and Ethan their information folders. Take time to review these when you're ready, I told them. They answer some basic questions about what happens next. Emma flipped through hers immediately, her methodical nature asserting itself even through her emotional turmoil. These educational trust documents, they're already active? Yes. The funds are already allocated specifically for your college. Expenses. They can't be touched for any other purpose. She nodded, some tension visibly leaving her body. Emma had always been our planner, needing structural certainty to feel secure. The documentation provided concrete evidence that her future remained stable despite her father's actions. Ethan tucked his folder into his backpack without opening it. I'll look later. No rush, I assured him. It's there when you need it, as AD. They prepared to leave for school. I addressed the immediate practical concern. Dad may try to contact you today. You can decide whether or not you want to speak with him. That's your choice. Emma's expression hardened. I don't. Not yet. Ethan shrugged, less decisive. Maybe? I don't know. Whatever you decide is okay, I told them. Just let me know if you need support. After they left, I drove to my design studio. The business needed attention. Current projects required progress, clients needed reassurance, invoices needed processing. Maintaining financial independence was now more crucial than ever. Erica had already organized client files as requested, creating a chronological portfolio of my work. I also pulled financial statements showing business growth, she said, handing me a folder. Clear documentation that this is your professional achievement. Thank you, I said, genuinely grateful. I'll need to reduce some commitments temporarily while we navigate the divorce proceedings. She nodded. I've drafted emails to clients explaining that you're focusing on priority projects and may need adjusted timelines for others. I reviewed the emails, professionally worded, offering alternatives without revealing personal details. These are perfect. By midday, I had reorganized my work commitments, ensuring income stability while creating space for the legal process ahead. I'd also consolidated business documentation proving my independent professional achievement, critical for protecting the design firm from Tom's potential claims. My phone rang. Lucas Barrett. We've received initial discovery responses from Tom's attorney, he reported. As expected, they're claiming the Westerly Holdings investments were legitimate business activities, not attempts to hide assets. What about the college funds? They're characterizing those transfers as temporary strategic reallocations, with the children's interests supposedly still protected. I shook my head at the audacity. The court didn't buy that explanation during the emergency hearing. No, and they're unlikely to accept it during full proceedings either. But Tom's legal strategy is emerging. He's positioning himself as the financial expert whose actions were misunderstood by his financially naive wife. The approach was painfully familiar, the same dismissive attitude Tom had displayed throughout our marriage, particularly when I questioned financial decisions. What's our counter? I asked. Two-pronged approach, Lucas explained. First, establish your financial competence through your successful business management. Second, demonstrate the clear pattern of asset concealment through Dana Walker's involvement. After the call, I drove to my bank and opened new checking and savings accounts, separate from any previously shared with Tom. I transferred my business revenues into these accounts, establishing a clear division between my professional earnings and any marital assets. Next, I met with our family doctor, Dr. Reynolds, who had treated the twins since they were infants. I'm concerned about their emotional health during this transition, I explained after outlining the situation. They're seeing their therapist, but I wanted you to be aware in case physical symptoms manifest. Dr. Reynolds nodded. Common stress responses include sleep disturbances, appetite changes, headaches, and stomach complaints. It's wise to monitor these, particularly with teenagers who might not connect physical symptoms to emotional causes. Is there anything specific I should be watching for with Emma and Ethan? She considered. Emma tends to internalize stress. Watch for changes in sleep patterns or withdrawal from activities she usually enjoys. Ethan expresses more outwardly. Potential anger outbursts or risk-taking behaviors would be concerning. This practical medical guidance completed another piece of my groundwork, ensuring the twins had comprehensive support across all aspects of their lives. That evening, as I prepared dinner, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. We need to discuss financial arrangements. Meeting with attorneys tomorrow, 2 p.m. Without your inheritance information, settlement discussions are incomplete. There it was, the first direct reference to my inheritance. Tom was already shifting his attention to the money he hadn't known about, the resources he couldn't control. I forwarded the message to Lucas without responding to Tom. Within minutes, Lucas called. Classic fishing expedition, he observed. He's realized there's money he didn't account for, and he wants details. What should I do? Nothing directly. I'll respond through proper channels, reiterating that your inheritance is separate property, maintained independently throughout the marriage. The specific details are irrelevant to the divorce proceedings. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of calm. Tom had always believed he maintained the upper hand through financial control. Now, discovering my independent resources, he was scrambling to reassert that control. But the groundwork I'd laid, legal, financial, emotional, and practical, had created a foundation he couldn't easily undermine. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, I held a position of strength he hadn't anticipated. The twins arrived home, subdued but steady. Emma immediately asked to see the documentation of Tom's transfers again, the concrete evidence of what had happened to their college funds. I need to understand exactly what he did, she explained. I provided the records, watching as she methodically traced the movement of money from their educational trusts to Westerly Holdings, then to the condo and boat purchases. Why didn't he think you'd notice? She asked finally, looking up with confusion in her eyes. I believe he thought I wouldn't check the accounts until it was too late, I answered honestly. He's always handled the finances. Emma's expression shifted to something harder, more resolved. That was a mistake. In her simple statement, I heard the first indication of a lesson learned, one I wished she hadn't needed to learn so young, but valuable nonetheless. Trust must be verified, especially where vital interests are concerned. The groundwork was laid. The foundations secured. Now we needed to build upon them, creating a new structure for our family's future, one based on transparency and genuine security, rather than the illusion Tom had maintained while systematically undermining it. 1 week after our confrontation with Tom, the temporary asset freeze was scheduled for review. I needed to strengthen my position before the next court appearance, building a case that would withstand Tom's increasingly aggressive legal maneuvers. They've filed a motion claiming your inheritance should be considered in the asset division, Lucas informed me during our morning call, arguing that since you've used it to establish new college funds, it's been commingled with marital obligations. That's absurd, I replied. He steals the children's college funds and now wants access to the money I've used to replace what he took? It's a desperate tactic, Lucas agreed, but one we need to counter definitively. We need comprehensive documentation showing the inheritance has always been maintained separately. I spent that morning at Corey's office reviewing every transaction related to my grandmother's trust since its establishment. Together, we created a detailed timeline proving the inheritance had never been commingled with marital assets. Separate accounts, separate management, separate purpose from the beginning. Elizabeth was remarkably foresighted, Corey observed, as we completed the documentation. The trust's language specifically anticipated the possibility of divorce and provided explicit protection. She lived through difficult times, I explained. She believed financial independence was a woman's most powerful protection. She was right, Corey said simply. Next, I met with Dean Marshall, a forensic accountant Lucas had recommended. He'd been reviewing Tom's financial disclosures, looking for inconsistencies or hidden assets we hadn't yet discovered. "There are significant gaps," he reported, spreading documents across the conference table in Lucas's office. "Regular transfers to offshore accounts beginning approximately 18 months ago, structured to appear as business investments but lacking corresponding documentation." He pointed to a series of transactions. "These movements suggest preparation, establishing financial pipelines that could be activated quickly if needed." "For what purpose?" I asked. "My professional assessment is that these represent contingency planning for asset concealment. Small enough to avoid immediate notice, consistent enough to establish patterns that could handle larger transfers when needed." "Can we trace where the money went?" Dean's expression was grim. "Some of it, yes, but several transfers went to jurisdictions with strong privacy laws. We may never know the full extent." "How much are we talking about?" "Conservatively? At least $480,000 over the past 18 months. Potentially more." The amount staggered me. Not just the children's college funds and our joint savings, but additional money I hadn't even realized was missing. Tom's betrayal was more extensive than I'd imagined. "Document everything you can find," Lucas instructed Dean. "We need to demonstrate a pattern of systematic financial deception to the court." That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. At my design studio, Miranda from the bank. She arrived carrying a folder and a concerned expression. "This isn't strictly protocol," she said after closing my office door. "But I felt you should know. Tom tried to access your new accounts yesterday." My stomach tightened. "How? He doesn't have authorization." "He claimed there had been a clerical error in the account setup, and that he should have been listed as a joint holder." She opened the folder, showing me the access attempt documentation. "When that failed, he became quite insistent, demanding to speak with management." I studied the report, noting the timestamp, just hours after our attorneys had exchanged discovery documents, including information about my separate financial arrangements. "Thank you for telling me," I said sincerely. "And for maintaining the account security." Miranda nodded. "The bank takes unauthorized access attempts very seriously. We flagged all your accounts with additional verification requirements." She hesitated. "Julie, I've worked with many divorce situations over the years. This level of aggression regarding accounts he has no legitimate claim to, it's concerning." Her warning echoed fears I'd been trying to suppress. Tom's financial maneuvers were becoming increasingly desperate as he realized how much control he'd lost. After Miranda left, I called Bree to update her on this latest development. Her response was immediate and practical. "Change all your passwords, email, social media, cloud storage, everything. Use complex combinations he wouldn't guess. Enable two-factor authentication wherever possible." "You think he'd try to access my personal accounts?" "I think a man who steals from his children and then tries to manipulate bank staff into giving him access to protected accounts will try anything," she replied bluntly. "Better to overprotect than underestimate." I followed her advice that evening, methodically updating every digital access point in my life. As I worked, Emma sat nearby doing homework, occasionally glancing at my focused activity. Dad texted. "Today," she said finally. "Wants to have dinner tomorrow night. Just him and me." I kept my tone neutral. "How do you feel about that?" She closed her textbook. "I haven't answered yet. Part of me wants to just say no forever." "That's understandable. But Dr. Palmer says avoiding the conversation doesn't actually process the feelings," she continued. "It just postpones them." I smiled slightly. Emma had always been insightful, but the maturity she was displaying amid this crisis surprised even me. "Whatever you decide, I support you," I assured her. "If you want to meet him, that's okay. If you're not ready, that's okay too." She nodded, considering. I think I want to go. I have questions he should answer directly, not through lawyers. Or you. Do you want me to drive you? I can wait nearby if that would help. No, she decided. I can handle it. But maybe... Can we have a code? If I text you homework question, it means come get me. Absolutely. Anytime, no questions asked. Later. That night, I received an email from Lucas with the subject line, Position Strengthened. He had obtained sworn statements from 3 former clients of Dana Walker, all describing similar patterns: assistance in concealing marital assets before divorce filings, specialized guidance in creating transaction trails difficult for spouses to trace. While not directly admissible in our case, these statements established a pattern that supported our central argument: that Tom's actions represented deliberate, systematic financial deception rather than legitimate, strategic reallocation. Our position was strengthening daily. Each document, each witness, each financial trace added another layer of protection against Tom's increasingly desperate attempts to regain control of assets he'd hidden and access resources he hadn't known existed. As I prepared for bed, I realized something important had shifted within me. The fear and shock that had initially dominated my response to Tom's betrayal had been replaced by something stronger: a clear-eyed determination to protect what mattered most: the children's future and the independence my grandmother had so wisely secured for me. 2 days before our scheduled court hearing for the permanent asset freeze, Lucas called with unexpected news. Judge Winters has been reassigned to a high-profile criminal case, he reported. Our hearing has been transferred to Judge Raymond Ellis. My heart sank. Is that good or bad for us? Potentially challenging, Lucas admitted. Ellis is known for favoring financial expertise and complex investment arguments. Tom's attorney will position him as the sophisticated investor making decisions beyond your comprehension. So we need to counter that narrative convincingly. Exactly. And quickly. After hanging up, I immediately called Miranda at the bank, explaining our situation and asking for her professional assessment of my financial competence. I'd be happy to provide a statement, she agreed without hesitation. You've managed complex project finances through your design business for years. That's documented in your banking history. Next, I reached out to Professor Alden at the local university's business school, who had consulted on several of my larger commercial design projects. He readily agreed to review my business financial management and provide an expert opinion on my demonstrated financial literacy. By late afternoon, I had secured these critical professional endorsements, but Lucas remained concerned about the overall narrative. We need someone who can directly counter Tom's self-presentation as the financial authority in your relationship, he explained. Someone who observed the dynamics firsthand. I thought about it carefully. Tom's former boss, Howard Griffith. He retired 2 years ago, but he knew us both for over a decade. He witnessed how I managed my design business while Tom worked under him. Lucas nodded. Perfect. A senior financial professional who observed your respective capabilities directly. Can you reach him? I hadn't spoken to Howard since his retirement party, but I still had his contact information. I called immediately, explaining the situation as concisely as possible. Julie, Howard responded after listening patiently, I've been hearing rumors about Tom's professional challenges. I had no idea things had escalated to this point. Professional challenges? I repeated, confused. There was a pause before Howard continued cautiously. Tom's departure from the firm wasn't entirely his choice. There were concerns about his judgment with client funds, nothing we could prove definitively, but enough to encourage a transition. This was entirely new information. Tom had described his move to a new firm as a strategic career advancement. Howard, would you be willing to discuss this with my attorney and possibly provide a statement about your observations of our respective financial competence? Absolutely. He agreed without hesitation. Tom's behavior with your children's funds is unconscionable. I'm happy to help set the record straight about who actually demonstrated financial responsibility in your marriage. That evening, Howard met with Lucas at his office while I joined by phone. He painted a picture of Tom that contrasted sharply with the image Tom had cultivated, describing a man who took excessive risks with client funds, who prioritized impressive short-term gains over long-term security, and who frequently dismissed concerns raised by female colleagues as emotional responses. Julie's design business, meanwhile, showed consistent growth and stable management, Howard noted. She routinely consulted appropriate experts for complex decisions while maintaining hands-on oversight of day-to-day operations, exactly the approach we recommend to clients for wealth management. By the end of the meeting, Lucas was visibly pleased. This completely reverses the narrative Tom is trying to establish. Howard's professional standing makes his assessment particularly credible to Judge Ellis. The next morning, I received a text from Emma after her dinner with Tom. Coming. Home early. Can you pick me up? I found her waiting outside the restaurant, her expression tight with controlled emotion. She slid into the passenger seat without speaking. How did it go? I asked gently after several minutes of silence. He brought Dana, she said finally, her voice flat. Didn't warn me. Just showed up with her like it was totally normal. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, but kept my tone neutral. That must have been surprising. He said he wanted us to get to know each other since she's part of his life now. Emma's voice cracked slightly. She talked about redecorating the condo, the one he bought with our college money. My heart ached for her. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I asked him directly about the money, she continued. He said you were catastrophizing normal financial management and that everything would have been fine if you hadn't overreacted. The familiar gaslighting strategy, making me the problem rather than his actions. What did you say? I asked. Showed him the bank statements, Emma replied, a hint of fierce pride breaking through her hurt. The ones you gave me, with the transfer records highlighted. I asked him to explain exactly how sending our college funds to buy a condo was normal. Financial management. I glanced at her, surprised. You brought the statements to dinner? She nodded. I wanted to hear his explanation directly, not through you or lawyers. And he got really angry, said I was too young to understand complex financial strategies, and that I was being manipulated by you. She looked out the window. Dana tried to change the subject, talking about how they could help me choose a college when the time comes, like she hadn't been part of stealing the money that was supposed to pay for it. We drove in silence for several minutes before Emma spoke again. I don't want to see him again. Not for a while. That's your choice, I assured her. You can take whatever time you need. That night, I received an unexpected call from Tom's sister, Erica. We'd been close once, though our contact had become more limited in recent years. Julie, she began without preamble, I've been hearing Tom's version of events for weeks. I think it's time I heard yours. I gave her the unvarnished truth, the discovered transfers, the shell company, Dana Walker's involvement, the condo and boat purchased with the children's educational funds. I had no idea, she said finally, her voice tight with anger. He told the family you were having a midlife crisis, making wild accusations because you couldn't handle him moving on. Moving on by stealing from Emma and Ethan? He didn't mention that part. She paused. How are they doing? Struggling, I admitted. Especially after Emma's dinner with him last night, where he ambushed her with Dana's presence. Erica's sharp intake of breath conveyed her shock. That's completely inappropriate, even if the financial issues were a misunderstanding, which I'm now certain they're not. Bringing her to a first dinner with his daughter is inexcusable. Emma handled it with remarkable maturity, but she's deeply hurt. I can imagine. Another pause. Julie, the family should know what's really happening. Tom's been painting himself as the victim of your unreasonableness. Would you be comfortable with me sharing the truth? This was an unexpected opportunity. Support from Tom's own family could significantly impact both the legal proceedings and the emotional landscape for the twins. Yes, I decided. They should know. The twins need their extended family's support, especially now. You'll have it, Erica promised. Starting with me. I'll be there for the hearing tomorrow. The final piece of critical support came from an unexpected source, Avon Palmer, the twins' therapist. He called that evening after his session with Ethan. I don't typically involve myself in legal proceedings, he began carefully, but in this case, I feel compelled to offer my professional assessment. Both Emma and Ethan have given me permission to speak with you about their sessions. I appreciate that, I said. How are they really doing? Processing complex emotions, as expected, he replied. But there's something specific you should be aware of. Both have independently expressed concern about their father's characterization of financial events, not just the hurt of his actions, but active worry about his repeated attempts to make them doubt documented facts. He's gaslighting them, I said, the realization settling like a stone. That's their perception, yes. And as a mental health professional, I find this particularly concerning. It's one thing to offer different perspectives or interpretations. It's another to directly contradict objective financial records while suggesting they're too young or inexperienced to understand what they're seeing. Can you document this assessment? With their permission, yes. I believe it's relevant to their psychological well-being and the court's understanding of the family dynamics. By the end of the day, I had secured a network of critical support, financial professionals who could counter Tom's narrative about my supposed financial naivety, family members who could speak to character and parenting concerns, and mental health expertise addressing the impact of Tom's manipulative tactics on the children. As I prepared for the next day's hearing, I felt a calm confidence replace the anxiety that had dominated recent weeks. Tom had calculated that I would be easily outmaneuvered, isolated, and discredited. He hadn't anticipated the community of support that would rally around me and the twins, professional, personal, and familial. His fundamental miscalculation wasn't just about hidden finances. It was about human connections, the very relationships he had dismissed as irrelevant to the business of divorce. The morning of the hearing, I woke before dawn. Making coffee in the quiet kitchen, I received a text from Bree. Interesting development. Call when you can. Dana Walker cleared out her condo last night, Bree reported when I called. Moved everything out between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. You think they're planning to disappear if the judge makes the asset freeze permanent? It's a strong possibility, she confirmed. People like Dana don't typically abandon established residences overnight unless they're implementing contingency plans. I immediately called Lucas, who decided to adjust our approach. We need to directly address flight risk in today's hearing. I'll prepare a supplemental filing requesting passport surrender. Emma appeared in the doorway, already dressed despite the early hour. Dad's girlfriend is running away? It appears she may be. Preparing to. We don't know for certain. She sat at the counter. Would Dad really just leave? Without saying goodbye? The vulnerability in her question broke my heart. I don't know, I answered honestly. But we're taking precautions. Should we be at the hearing today? She asked. I'd been conflicted about this, wanting to shield them while respecting their need for closure. It might be difficult to hear some of the details, I cautioned. More difficult than imagining them, she countered. Ethan and I talked. We want to be there. I'll speak with Lucas, I promised. If he agrees, you can attend the opening statements. Then decide if you want to stay longer. Emma nodded, then shifted to practical matters. What are you wearing? My navy suit, probably. She shook her head. The charcoal gray one. With the light blue blouse? It looks more authoritative. Her observation made me smile despite everything. By mid-morning, I met Lucas at his office to review our strategy. Tom's legal team filed a last-minute brief, he informed me, showing me a document challenging Howard Griffith's testimony, claiming professional disagreements during Tom's employment. This is deliberately misleading, I noted. Howard was concerned about Tom's handling of client funds. Exactly, Lucas agreed, presenting his response with documentation from the firm's HR files showing specific concerns about Tom's financial judgment. Internal memos documenting pattern recognition failures, client complaints, and formal warnings about compliance issues. We finalized our presentation strategy, with Lucas emphasizing the importance of maintaining composure. Tom's attorney will try to provoke emotional responses to support their narrative that you're acting from jealousy, rather than legitimate financial concerns. At noon, Tom called unexpectedly. "We should talk before the hearing," he said. "Privately. I don't think that's appropriate. Our attorneys should handle any communications." "This isn't about legal strategy," he insisted. "It's about the twins." His tone shifted to one I recognized. Reasonable, slightly condescending, meant to make me doubt myself. "Julie, you know financial management isn't your strength. These structures seem complicated to you, but they're standard practice in wealth management. Then you'll have no trouble explaining them to Judge Ellis," I replied evenly. At 1:30 p.m., I met the twins at school, signing them out for the hearing. Both were unusually quiet during the drive downtown. Approaching the courthouse, I saw Erica waiting on the steps, along with my mother Miranda, who had driven in from her retirement community. Even Tom's mother stood slightly apart from the others, the presence of both maternal and paternal family members sending a powerful message that this wasn't simply a battle between Tom and me, but about accountability to the entire family. As we walked toward the entrance, I saw Tom arriving alone from the opposite direction. Our eyes met across the plaza. In that brief connection, I saw unexpected uncertainty. The confident financial manager who had dismissed my concerns now looked momentarily shaken by the array of supporters gathered around us. We entered the courthouse together, not as the family we once were, but as participants in a legal proceeding that would establish the consequences of broken trust and determine the protections necessary for our children's future. Courtroom 302 was smaller than I expected, formal and austere, with polished wooden benches. Lucas guided us to the plaintiff's table while across the aisle, Tom sat with Gerald Hoffman, their heads bent in urgent conversation. The twins settled between my mother and Erica in the first row. I noticed Tom glance their way, surprised by their presence and the family members surrounding them. Judge Ellis entered, silver-haired, stern-faced, with decades of experience evident in his bearing. After reviewing the case briefly, he addressed Lucas. "Mr. Barrett, please present your client's position." Lucas rose confidently. "Your Honor, this case involves the systematic transfer of children's educational funds into a shell company controlled solely by the respondent. These funds were subsequently used to purchase luxury assets, specifically a condominium valued at $695,000 and a boat valued at $215,000. He presented the timeline of transfers from the educational trusts to Westerly Holdings LLC, then to the property purchases, entering all documentation into evidence. When Hoffman rose for the defense, his approach was dismissive. "Your Honor, what we have here is a fundamental misunderstanding of sophisticated financial management by someone without expertise in investment strategies." Judge Ellis leaned forward. "Are you suggesting that transferring designated educational funds to purchase a personal condominium and recreational boat constitutes legitimate educational investment?" Hoffman didn't flinch. "Modern portfolio theory recognizes that real estate and tangible assets often provide superior returns compared to traditional educational savings vehicles." Mr. Williams was applying professional investment principles. Lucas called Howard Griffith first, who testified about Tom's financial judgment during his employment. Thomas Williams consistently demonstrated concerning judgment regarding risk assessment. His departure from our firm was directly related to these concerns. When asked about the transfers, Howard was unequivocal. Such transfers violate basic fiduciary principles, particularly when the funds were specifically designated for children's education. Miranda from the bank testified next, establishing the timeline of transfers and contradicting Tom's claim of routine financial management. Mrs. Williams came to me immediately concerned about unauthorized transfers. Her questions demonstrated a clear understanding of appropriate financial boundaries. The forensic accountant, Dean Marshall, methodically outlined the pattern of concealed transfers. These transactions represent deliberate asset concealment, not legitimate investment. Strategy, the timing, structure, and destination of transfers are consistent with preparation for divorce. Throughout these testimonies, I watched Tom's expression shift from confidence to concern as his narrative was systematically dismantled. When I took the stand, I described discovering the emptied college funds, tracing the missing money, and establishing new educational trusts from my inheritance. "Why did you maintain your inheritance separately throughout your marriage?" Lucas asked. "My grandmother established the trust with explicit instructions that it remain separate from marital assets," I explained. "She believed strongly in financial independence, especially for women." During cross-examination, Hoffman tried to undermine me. "Isn't it possible you simply misunderstood legitimate investment activities undertaken by your financially sophisticated husband?" "I understood the bank statements showing the children's college funds reduced from $137,842.53 to $702.16, I replied evenly. "I understood the transfer records showing that money moving to purchase a condominium and boat. These aren't complex financial concepts. Isn't it true that your hasty legal action was motivated by discovering your husband's relationship with another woman rather than genuine financial concerns?" "No," I said firmly. "I filed for an emergency asset freeze after discovering funds designated for our children's education had been emptied. The motivation was protecting my children's future." For nearly 20 minutes, Hoffman attempted to portray me as financially naive and emotionally reactive, but I maintained my composure, directly addressing each question with factual clarity. When Tom took the stand, his familiar confidence had returned. He described advanced investment strategies and portfolio diversification that would eventually benefit the children through superior returns compared to traditional educational savings vehicles. Lucas's cross-examination was methodical. "Mr. Williams, can you explain how the children would access these superior returns for college expenses when the assets are titled solely in your name through Westerly Holdings LLC?" Tom hesitated. "The appreciation would eventually be transferred back to appropriate accounts." "When, exactly?" "Your older children will begin college in 3 years. Market timing is crucial in maximizing returns," Tom replied, avoiding the direct question. Lucas pressed harder. "Is Ms. Walker listed as a co-owner or beneficiary on any Westerly Holdings assets?" Tom's composure cracked slightly. "That's a personal matter unrelated to the investment strategy." "I'll rephrase," Lucas said calmly. "Does Ms. Walker have access to or benefit from the condominium purchased with your children's educational funds?" "Objection," Hoffman interjected. "Assumes facts not in evidence." "Sustained," Judge Ellis ruled. But his expression had darkened. Lucas shifted tactics. "Mr. Williams, are you aware that Ms. Walker has vacated her residence as of last night, removing all possessions?" Tom's head snapped up, genuine shock crossing his face. "What?" The reaction confirmed our suspicion. Dana hadn't informed Tom of her departure. Whatever their plans had been, she had apparently decided not to wait for the court's ruling. "No further questions," Lucas said, returning to our table. After closing arguments, Judge Ellis reviewed his notes silently, the courtroom tense with anticipation. Finally, he looked up. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds that Mr. Williams improperly transferred funds specifically designated for his children's education to purchase assets for personal use. The temporary freeze on all Westerly Holdings assets is hereby made permanent pending final divorce proceedings. He continued. Additionally, given evidence suggesting flight risk, the court orders surrender of passports for both Mr. Williams and Ms. Walker within 24 hours. Tom sat motionless, stunned by both the ruling and the revelation of Dana's disappearance. Behind me, I heard Emma's sharp intake of breath and felt Ethan shift in his seat. Mrs. Williams, Judge Ellis added, your establishment of new educational trusts for your children is noted and commended by this court. However, this does not eliminate Mr. Williams's responsibility for his actions regarding the original funds. As we gathered our materials to leave, Tom approached, his voice low and urgent. Julie, about Dana leaving. I didn't know. We need to talk. Through our attorneys, I replied, moving past him to where the twins waited. Outside the courtroom, Emma asked the question I knew was coming. Is Dad in trouble? He's facing consequences for his decisions, I answered carefully. The court is ensuring he can't remove any more assets while our divorce proceeds. And Dana's really gone? Ethan asked, it appears so. The twins exchanged glances, processing this latest betrayal. Then Emma straightened her shoulders, a gesture so like my own that it startled me. Good, she said simply. Let's go home. As we walked toward the exit, Tom stood alone by the courtroom door, watching his family leave without him, the cost of his choices finally becoming clear. The drive home from the courthouse was quiet, each of us processing the day's events in our own way. The twins had witnessed their father's actions laid bare in clinical legal terms, no longer rumors or accusations but documented facts affirmed by a judge. The reality was settling in. Do you think Dana left the country? Ethan asked suddenly, breaking the silence. I don't know, I answered honestly. But the court order for passport surrender will make it difficult for your father to join her if she did. Emma stared out the window. He looked surprised when Mr. Barrett mentioned she'd moved out. Yes, I agreed. I think he was. So she abandoned him too, Emma observed, the irony not lost on any of us. When we arrived home, my mother and Erica came in briefly. The support of both families created a buffer against the emotional aftermath, helping the twins transition from the formality of the courtroom back to the safety of home. After they left, I found Emma sitting on the back porch, staring at her phone. Dad's texting, she said without looking up. Wants to explain. Says there's more to the story. There usually is, I replied carefully. Whether you want to hear it is your decision. She set her phone down. I don't. Not now, anyway. She looked up at me directly. The money's really safe now? For college? Completely, I assured her. The educational trusts are legally established with your names as sole beneficiaries. The funds can only be used for your education. Some of the tension left her shoulders. College had been her focus since middle school. Research trips to campuses, countless conversations about potential majors, meticulous planning for application timelines. The threat to that future had shaken her more deeply than perhaps anything else. Around dinner time, Lucas called with an update. Tom surrendered his passport an hour ago, he reported, but there's been no sign of Dana Walker. Local police went to her last known addresses. Nothing. She's gone, I concluded. Appears that way, Lucas agreed, which raises questions about other assets we haven't yet discovered. What happens next? The forensic accounting continues. The court-appointed receiver takes control of the frozen assets, and we prepare for divorce proceedings with a much stronger position than we had 2 weeks ago. Tom tried calling several times that evening. I let the calls go to voicemail, not ready for his explanations or justifications. His messages grew, increasingly desperate. First angry about the court's decision, then shocked about Dana's departure, finally pleading to discuss arrangements for the children. I listened to each one dispassionately, forwarding them to Lucas as documentation of Tom's state of mind. What struck me most was how quickly his priority had shifted from Dana back to family connections once he realized she had abandoned him. Before bed, I found Ethan shooting baskets at our driveway hoop, his usual method of processing emotions. "You okay?" I asked, handing him a water bottle. He caught it, nodding slightly. "Better than Dad, I guess." The simple observation carried surprising maturity. At 15, Ethan was already recognizing the consequences of choices, his father's and potentially his own. "Mom?" he asked, bouncing the ball thoughtfully. "Grandma Elizabeth knew, didn't she? That's why she made you keep the inheritance separate." The insight startled me. I don't know that she predicted this exactly, but she believed in financial independence. She wanted me to have options no matter what happened. Ethan nodded, processing this. Smart lady. As the house settled into nighttime quiet, I felt the first tentative sense of resolution. The immediate crisis had been addressed, the children's future secured, and Tom's deception officially documented. Whatever came next would unfold from this foundation of truth rather than illusion. 3 weeks after the court hearing, our family had settled into new rhythms. The twins had returned to their regular activities. Emma's debate team was preparing for nationals, and Ethan's basketball team had made the regional playoffs. Their sessions with Dr. Palmer continued, providing a safe space to process their feelings about their father's betrayal. Tom had moved into a small apartment downtown, a significant downgrade from the luxury condo he'd purchased with the children's money. The court-appointed receiver now controlled that property, along with the boat. Dana Walker remained untraceable, having apparently fled the country before the passport surrender order took effect. On a quiet Saturday morning, I found myself sorting through old photo albums in the living room. Images of family vacations, birthday celebrations, and ordinary moments captured during happier times. The smiling faces looked back at me like artifacts from another life, one built on what I now recognized as carefully maintained illusion. "Do we have to get rid of all of these?" Emma asked, finding me surrounded by scattered photographs. "No," I assured her. "We're just reorganizing, not erasing." She sat beside me, picking up a photo from her 10th birthday, Tom placing a cake with sparkler candles in front of her beaming face. "It's weird," she said softly. "These happy memories still happened, even though everything was different than we thought." Her observation captured the complicated reality we were navigating. The joy in those moments had been genuine, even if the foundation beneath them had been compromised by Tom's character. "People are complex," I told her. "Your father loved you then, and he loves you now. His betrayal was about his own flaws, not about that love." This perspective hadn't come easily to me. It had emerged gradually through my own therapy sessions as I worked to separate legitimate anger at Tom's actions from the need to help our children maintain a healthy understanding of their relationship with him. Later that day, I met with Miranda at a small cafe near the bank, no longer as client and banker, but as friends. "The divorce filing is progressing," I told her. "Tom's legal position has weakened considerably since Dana disappeared, with whatever liquid assets they managed to hide." Miranda nodded thoughtfully. "When you first came to me about those missing funds, I never imagined it would unravel so completely." "Neither did I admitted. "I was just trying to understand what happened to the college accounts." "And now?" Considered her question. "Now I'm building something new, for myself and for the twins." That evening, I sat on our back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in purples and golds. My grandmother's rocking chair creaked gently beneath me, a piece of furniture I'd inherited along with her financial wisdom. I could almost hear her voice. Julie, security isn't just about money. It's about knowing your own strength. The painful week since discovering Tom's betrayal had revealed a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. I'd navigated legal complexities, supported the twins through emotional turmoil, maintained my design business, and faced down Tom's attempts at manipulation, all while establishing a new foundation for our future. My phone buzzed with a text from Bree. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate? You've come through the storm. I smiled, typing back, yes, not just survived it, navigated it. And that made all the difference. I wasn't simply a woman who had endured betrayal. I was someone who had charted a deliberate course through crisis, making conscious choices that protected what mattered most. The transformation wasn't just in circumstances, but in perception, of myself, of relationships, of what constitutes real security. Tom's betrayal had stripped away illusions, but in their place grew something more valuable, authentic understanding of my own capacity. 6 months after discovering Tom's betrayal, I stood in our redecorated living room, hosting a small gathering of women from my community support group. Some were navigating divorces themselves, others had emerged on the other side, and a few were simply friends who had stood by me through the darkest days. The final settlement was signed yesterday, I announced, raising my glass in a simple toast. The divorce is officially complete. Supportive murmurs and gentle applause rippled through the room. These women had witnessed my journey from shocked discovery to strategic response to this final resolution. What made the biggest difference? Asked a woman who had just discovered her own husband's financial deception. How did you stay so focused when everything was falling apart? I considered her question carefully. I stopped reacting and started strategizing. When I discovered what Tom had done, my first instinct was emotional confrontation. Instead, I gathered information, secured evidence, and built a support network before making any moves. Another woman nodded. The inheritance was your safety net. Yes and no, I replied. The financial cushion helped, certainly, but my grandmother gave me more than money. She gave me the mindset that I deserved independence and security. That was the true inheritance. As the conversation continued, I found myself sharing the lessons I'd learned through this painful transformation. Document everything. Emotions fade, memories blur, but evidence remains concrete. Choose advisors who respect your intelligence rather than exploit your vulnerability. Protect your children's understanding of themselves, even when it means carefully separating their father's actions from their own worth. Recognize that financial betrayal isn't just about money. It's about trust, respect, and fundamental values. After our guests departed, I joined the twins on the back porch. At 16 now, they both seemed older than their years, not in a way that suggested lost innocence, but in the thoughtful perspective they'd developed. Dad called again about Thanksgiving, Ethan mentioned. Said he could host at his apartment. If we want, I nodded. What do you both think about that? They exchanged glances, their twin communication still intact despite everything they'd weathered. Maybe just dinner, Emma suggested. Not the whole day. That sounds reasonable, I agreed. You can always call me if you need an exit strategy. Emma smiled slightly. We know, Mom. We're good at exit strategies now. The comment wasn't bitter, just a simple acknowledgement of a skill they'd acquired through necessity. Later that night, I looked through the final divorce documents once more. The settlement had been decisive, with Tom losing most of his claims once the full extent of his financial deception was documented. The court had ordered the sale of both the condo and boat, with proceeds restored to educational trusts for the twins. My inheritance remained fully protected as separate property, but the true victory wasn't in the legal resolution. It was in the clarity I'd gained about myself, about trust, about building security that extended beyond bank accounts. Before closing my laptop, I wrote an email to my grandmother's sister, the only surviving member of Elizabeth's generation. Finally understand what Grandma meant when she said a woman's wealth is in her wisdom, not just her wallet. Her foresight protected us financially, but her example showed me how to protect us in every other way. The twins and I are standing strong, building new foundations, and moving forward with clear eyes. She would be proud, not of the inheritance I preserved, but of the inheritance I'm now passing on. The knowledge that we have the capacity to weather any storm when we combine preparation with courage. As I hit send, I felt the circle complete. Wisdom received, applied, and now shared. The painful journey had transformed into something meaningful, not just for me and my children, but potentially for others facing similar betrayals. Some inheritances, I had learned, reveal their true value only when tested by fire. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.